All right. So let's keep drawing people. What I want to look at now is how to make people that are expressive. There's a few ways to do that. The most simple way is to think about what's the most expressive part about a person. It tends to be their facial expressions. So we're going to actually practice a few facial expressions. So here's one thing that I like to do to practice. So I'll first start by just drawing a couple of circles that are going to represent some heads. And then I'll think of a kind of random emotion. To start, why don't you do the same thing? And then we can practice a few really basic expressions. So remember that we talked about the kind of center point of the head being where the eyes fell? That will be useful, but we can actually draw that in different places, and that will help us with expression as well. But let's start with some really just basic um, kind of faces using really simple lines. The most common expression is, of course, going to be a happy person. What does a happy person look like? Well, one of the easiest things you can do to find out is either look in a mirror and smile, or actually using your cell phone or um, any type of like email service on your computer, and they have the emojis. Emojis are the simplest kind of expressions that you can imagine. But now there's so many of them, it's almost like cheating. So if you ever want to draw an expression, check and see if there's an emoji for it first, and then you can draw that emoji. Don't use the emoji, draw your own. But you can use it as a basis. But the traditional happy person, of course, is this kind of big smile and the kind of two eyes. That's pretty simple. That's a good start. You can make it a little bit more complex, though. Let's actually zoom in. Remember, we have our center line here. When people are happy, sometimes they tend to look up more than they look down. I don't know why that is, but it's just kind of a thing. So instead of drawing my center line here, I'm going to kind of draw it like up here. I'm just going to try this out. And then remember that that's the vertical line. If that's the vertical line, we know that our eyes are going to fit kind of equal distance between that line. So like here and here, say, over here. And then that would meet here. So the eyes would be somewhere around here. This is just a demonstration, but we'll erase those lines. Okay. So the eyes will be around here. One here, one here. And then you can draw the mouth. Typically, the mouth is, if you're looking straight on at somebody and the eyes are in the center, the nose is usually halfway between this center line and the bottom of the chin. So halfway in there is kind of going to be where the nose falls. I can think of just drawing it like I draw it as a triangle. It's an easy way to draw a nose. And then the mouth is actually halfway between that bottom of the nose and the chin, which is about here. So that's like a kind of tends to be where your facial features fall on your face. Tends to be, right? Everybody's different. But of course, if that this line is pushed up, then everything gets pushed up, right? And the reason is because the you can kind of see the bottom of the head is here, and this is like the underside of the chin. It's kind of complex, but it's worth noting. Don't think of this as the bottom anymore. This is almost the back of the head now. The bottom of the face is actually that line. Anyway, but nevertheless, the nose would kind of fall somewhere over here, and you could put the mouth here. So they're looking up, they're happy, they're cheerful. Um, that smile is a kind of classic. Oh, actually, take a look at this. So if we draw the nose and then the smile, you're like, okay, yeah, it looks pretty good. But if we get rid of the nose, it actually doesn't change the expression that much. And that's because the nose doesn't typically communicate a lot of expression. That's why when you see like an emoji or something, they tend to omit the nose. They just don't use it, and it's because it doesn't draw or it doesn't create a lot of it doesn't communicate a lot. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Now it can you can draw a kind of really intense nose. I think especially if people are angry, their no you get like these crinkles on their nose and maybe it's something like this. Then the nose might kind of express some things. You have those crease lines because everything's getting pushed, but typically they don't. So you can usually get away with not drawing a nose, and get your expression just fine, just fine. Of course, there's a lot of different ways to draw a kind of happy person. They might have their mouth open, right? So in that case, you still kind of have this U shape, but all you're doing is drawing a straight line on top. It kind of looks like the wedge of a lemon or something, or a watermelon or something like that. Quarter of watermelon. That looks really good too. Could be laughing or something like that. You might even color this in black to indicate they're really having a good chuckle. That's one thing you can do. Another thing you can do is actually play with the eyes. So we drew them. You could draw them as dots. I tend to draw them as lines. But something that also happens when we smile, our face tends to kind of when we're smiling, our cheeks push up. Let's see if I can show you. Your cheeks kind of push up like this, and you get this shape, and so the eyes kind of fall over here, right? And that pushing up is sometimes just indicated with these types of lines, so that the eyes themselves take on this arc shape, and that's very common. And the other thing you can add to that is to draw the eyebrows, because eyebrows do express a lot. So those can be really useful. For instance, if I drew a happy face, like a typical happy face, like, okay, yeah, looks like this person's really happy. But if I added some eyebrows, it changes the expression entirely. Now it's like an evil face, right? So the eyebrows are important. A couple things about the eyebrows is, this is kind of neutral. The more they slope this way, so they're higher on the inside, tends to be more surprised or excited type of thing. And if they're going the opposite way, so they're coming kind of down in the middle part, um, it tends to represent anger or some sort of like evilness. So you can definitely play around with that. Yeah. So those are a couple ways of drawing a happy face. Right? A little bit more complex, but yeah, it's fun to do more with our expressions. All right. Well, actually I'll skip over this one. Let's go straight over here. All right. So you kind of already saw what an angry face looked like, but I want to show you one more thing. When we're angry, we tend to look down. And of course, if this is the center line, but we know it's a sphere, so it comes down kind of like this. So now this is our center line. This person is kind of looking down, but check this out. Their eyes are still looking up at you. Does that make sense? Imagine the head. If the head was just turning down, so say you're walking around and you found a quarter, you saw a quarter on the floor. Um, oh, a quarter, right? Then it would look like that. Let's give even more detail. So you saw the quarter. This is kind of more realistic eyes, and your eyes are looking down at that quarter. Whoa, that would be one thing. But if you were angry and your eyes were down here, our face tends to like look down, but our eyes look up. We're like looking down, but our eyes are looking kind of up at the person that we're angry with or the thing that we're angry with. And so the pupils are up here. And that's kind of more what an angry person would look like. Sometimes they have creases in their forehead. They're so angry. So there's actually some kind of simple ways of drawing that. Kind of start with the eyebrows and just add lines here. Give them that kind of pouty mouth looking up at you. Or if they're really angry, they might have like an open mouth. You can almost draw that like a square. Now they look kind of angry, right? They could also be enraged and looking up. It's definitely a thing. So you could do the same thing up here. And you can even exaggerate the mouth, you know. That would be like the tongue in there, and so this would be black. Now they're like, why did you do this to me? They're really angry. It's a way of expressing that. If you want to draw really simple, you can actually just do the eyebrows and the kind of pouty mouth. You can get away with that too. Or you can just add a kind of quick line over here. And that kind of does a double line of the eyebrows and the eyes. And this is really simple. Like one of the things that's nice about getting good at doodling is to try to think of the quickest and easiest way to draw something. And that sometimes translates to the less lines. So the least amount of lines for an angry face is that it's 3 lines, right? For a happy face, it's the same thing, 3 lines. So those are kind of easy ways to communicate some expression. Let's do a more complex face though. Okay, actually we'll keep this one just so you'll remember what an angry person looks like. Here's the arms there, kind of shaking their fists or something. Anyway, okay. Let's draw one that's a little more complex. I want to draw someone who's kind of devious or like sassy, a sassy expression. That's more complex than just happy, sad, angry. Let's try to draw a sassy person. All right. With that, a couple things can happen. So I have my center line. We'll just use some kind of typical eyes to start, but we'll manipulate them. So if this is the vertical center line, right? Couple things. You could say like this is a neutral mouth, happy, sad, or angry, right? But you can combine things too. So what if you combine kind of neutral and happy, and you gave kind of a smirk? Okay, it's getting sassier, right? Not quite sassy, but it's getting sassier. Well, we can actually add to that with the eyebrows, because eyebrows, again, communicate a lot, and we know that based where the eyebrows are can make an expression this or that. So if these were just kind of a neutral, or excuse me, like happy or excited eyebrows, look something like that. That almost kind of looks more smug. That works good for a smug face. But if we changed one of the eyebrows, because cool thing about eyebrows, they don't always have to do the same thing. They can actually do something different. And I'll show you. So say we have one kind of smug guy eyebrow, and then one kind of like evil eyebrow. So it's like coming this way. Like then we get a kind of sassy face. Like they made a kind of sassy joke or something like that. They're waiting for you to laugh. So there's a mix of smugness because they know they're clever, and also they're being a little saucy. You might get something like that. It's kind of a fun way. This might even be more neutral as well. So it could be something like this, which is sassy, but maybe without the kind of deviousness of it, right? So these are really basic ways. And again, the more simple you can do it, the better it will be for a doodle. If you're trying to illustrate something or paint, expressions on a face, you're going to use a lot more, obviously. But these are some really fundamental ways of drawing a facial expression.